Hello, guys, and welcome back to the Healthy Not Complicated podcast. Today, we are going to be talking about all things blood sugar spikes, continuous glucose monitors, and what I've learned from wearing a continuous glucose monitor. So, I've been wearing continuous glucose monitors on and off since about 2018. I think the first videos I did where I was wearing a continuous glucose monitor, I was comparing eating a vegan diet, which is typically high in carbohydrates, to a carnivore diet, which obviously has no carbohydrates. Oh my God, I went back and just flicked through those videos the other day. I don't recognize myself. If you guys watched my last podcast episode, completely unrelated to this, but I was talking about my double jaw surgery and just how different I looked before that surgery. So if you guys go back to those old videos, I don't even know who that girl was. It's so weird to, just look back on this. Anyways, that was a little bit of a side note, not relevant. But recently I have been wearing a continuous glucose monitor again, and I've been really trying to run a lot of tests because I get asked frequently, does this food spike blood sugar? Does that food spike blood sugar? What if you pair this food with that food? What if you take apple cider vinegar beforehand? What if you take berberine beforehand? What if you cook and cool potatoes? Spoiler alert, that does make a difference. And so I've been running a lot of those tests and making short form videos, posting them on TikTok, posting them here on YouTube Shorts, or if you're listening on Spotify, I am posting them on YouTube as well, because I really want to make this information accessible to people. And I know there are other people who are sort of in this niche where they're doing a lot of testing on their blood sugar and testing different things, but I really just wanted to make it bite-sized so you get the information right away. I find a lot of people, you go to these videos, and personally, I'll just be skipping through to kind of see the results because I find they're doing a lot of like chit chat and I really just want to see it right away. So since I've been testing a lot of foods, and like I said, I've been wearing continuous glucose monitors on and off since 2018, I have run a lot of tests. In today's video, I wanted to share some of the main lessons that I've learned, because there are ways to minimize blood sugar spikes that a lot of people overlook. There are foods I've eaten that have spiked my blood sugar that I didn't think they would. And I just wanted to share all of that in today's episode. So we'll start off by talking about why blood sugar spikes matter, what they mean, why it's important to minimize them, whether you're diabetic or not. Then we'll get into a little bit more about what continuous glucose monitors are and how they differ from traditional blood glucose monitors, because the numbers are actually slightly different and they don't actually test the same thing. A lot of people don't know that. Then we'll get into some of the foods that I have found to spike my blood sugar the most. And then just a few other tips and tricks and things I found that have helped to balance my blood sugar. And I think that will pretty much be the episode. So I'll put some timestamps. If you're watching on YouTube, they'll be on the progress bar here. If you're listening on Spotify, there will be timestamps in the description box. So if you want to skip ahead to any part, feel free to do that. I don't like gatekeeping, or I guess like making people wait until the end to find the part that they were actually looking for in the video. Like I said, that's what I'm trying to do with my shorter glucose monitor tests, is just get to the point very quickly. But anyways, let's get into why blood sugar spikes matter. Now, in isolation, our blood sugar going up, not a problem. This happens because our body is breaking down carbohydrates. It's broken down into glucose, enters our bloodstream, causes our blood sugar to go up, and our body knows how to deal with this. That's when it releases insulin, and the insulin takes the excess sugar from our bloodstream to the cells in our body, and that brings our blood sugar back to baseline. Now, our body also has mechanisms if our blood sugar goes too low, then it releases hormones that will allow the body to create glucose and release more glucose, and that will bring blood sugar back up. So in isolation, a blood sugar spike, not a problem in terms of your long-term health, at least. But over time, if we are constantly having these big swings up and down in our blood sugar, this is what eventually leads to our cells resisting the actions of insulin, not taking in the glucose that insulin's trying to deliver as it should. This is what causes insulin resistance. This is what eventually will cause your fasting blood sugar to go up and will cause you to become pre-diabetic, type 2 diabetic. And of course, insulin resistance and type 2 diabetes are associated with so many other diseases. It increases your heart disease risk. It increases your Alzheimer's risk. So basically, at the root, the more you can balance your blood sugar, the less glycemic variability you see throughout the day, the lower your disease risk is going to be, and the better your metabolic health. This is also going to make weight loss easier because when insulin levels are high, this signals to the body that energy is available because it is. You just ate something, your insulin went up, and this stops fat burning. But when we become insulin resistant, our insulin levels are constantly high. They take longer to come back down to baseline. And because they're elevated, we spend less time throughout the day in a fat burning state. And this is why weight loss is so hard when you're insulin resistant. Now, in the short term, blood sugar spikes throughout the day. If you eat a lot of sugar or carb heavy food all at once and your blood sugar goes up pretty quickly, it generally tends to come down pretty quickly. And a lot of times, if you have this big spike and crash, it drops a little bit below baseline. And this is when cravings hit. This is when hunger hits. This is when your energy crashes. This is when you experience brain fog. And this is when you reach for something sugary, which again is going to spike your blood sugar. And again, it's going to come crashing down. And you just end up on this blood sugar roller coaster all day long. Your energy is going up, but then it's crashing. You just can't concentrate consistently. It makes your whole day a lot more difficult. And this is why even for people who aren't diabetic, who don't have prediabetes, who don't have insulin resistance, controlling blood sugar is not only going to decrease your risk of developing insulin resistance, but it's also going to help you to just feel better throughout the day, to have more consistent energy, have a better mood. You're just a better person when your blood sugar is more stable and you're not on this blood sugar roller coaster. Now, before we dive into my findings, I quickly want to talk about what continuous glucose monitors are. So basically, this is a device that you put on your arm. Sometimes I think people put them on their stomach, but generally like the back of your arm is where you place the device. And it's not a needle, like it's a needle when you put it in, but it's a little, I don't even know, because it's like plastic. It has a little piece that goes into your arm, and basically what it does is it measures the fluid between your cells. And this fluid coincides with your blood glucose levels. It doesn't match up with them perfectly, and this is why there's always going to be a little bit of a delay if you're testing using a continuous glucose monitor, but then you're also like pricking your finger and doing a blood test. The numbers won't match up perfectly, but if your device is set up correctly, they should trend the same way. Continuous glucose monitors can read slightly high or slightly low, but yeah, they should be trending the same way as your blood glucose. And the reason that continuous glucose monitors are so beneficial is because they allow you to see your blood sugar, one, in more or less real time, but also just see what it was doing from moment to moment. When you just do one blood sugar test with a finger prick, unless you're doing it at intervals after you eat or throughout the day, you're not really seeing what's going on in between, if that makes sense. So a lot of times diabetics will be told to just test their blood sugar 2 hours after they eat. And basically what you're looking for is that it comes back down to baseline. However, if you do this, then you could be completely missing the spike. You have no idea what's happening in your blood sugar in between. You're just missing a lot of information. Now, while I do think continuous glucose monitors can be a very helpful tool, I think a lot of people get a little bit obsessive over it and a little bit obsessive over blood sugar spikes in general. I talked about this in a previous podcast episode where I was speaking about what I believe is in and out in 2025 in terms of health and wellness. And one of the things I actually said was being obsessive over your blood sugar. So if you are someone who is just getting started with trying to control your blood sugar better, then yes, it can be a very, very helpful tool to wear a continuous glucose monitor because you can just kind of conceptualize exactly how specific foods are impacting your body. However, if you continually wear it, and if you kind of freak out over every little spike, that's where I think it can be a little bit, it's doing more harm than good. Because like I said, in isolation, one spike, not the end of the world. The other downside to continuous glucose monitors is that Well, depending on where you live, a lot of countries you require a prescription. Some countries, I believe in Canada, you can buy it over the counter, and I think in the UK as well. In Australia, where I am, I believe you need a prescription, and also in the United States. Now, there are a lot of companies coming out that are sort of becoming the middleman. Well, they'll figure out how to get the prescription for you. So NutriScience is a big one that I actually really like. And there's one in Australia called Vivally. Vivally? I think that's what it's called. I'll link to both in the description box down below if you are curious, because yes, if you're first starting out, it can be a helpful tool. If you've never tracked your blood sugar before, then I recommend trying it at least once. And of course, if you are diabetic and you're needing to measure your blood sugar continuously, this helps a lot as well. But once you kind of get a sense of how different macronutrients impact your body, once you understand the principles like not eating carbohydrates naked and always pairing them with protein and fat instead, and how that will lower blood sugar spikes and improve your glycemic control, then I think it's not as important to be continuously monitoring your blood sugar. So even though I do think these companies are helpful, they are pretty expensive. I believe I have some promo codes. I think I have like $50 off NutriSense. I'll find that code and put it down below. But over time, the cost obviously adds up. And this is where just using a regular blood glucose monitor is a much cheaper option. All it requires is a finger prick. You just need the device, and then you just need to buy more of the strips, which are pretty inexpensive. But then it's just the convenience, right? Like if you're trying to see how a food impacts you, you want to measure 30 minutes you want to measure at baseline. You want to measure 30 minutes after you eat, an hour after you eat, an hour and a half after you eat, and then 2 hours after you eat. And that way you'll be able to sort of see how your blood sugar was trending, if there was a spike, if it went up and down, that sort of thing. So it's a little bit more annoying to use a blood glucose monitor, but a lot more affordable. But anyways, let's get into the meat of this video now and talk about some of the most shocking foods that spiked my blood sugar. The first one I'm going to talk about, this has honestly just stuck with me for years and years, and this actually happened before I had ever used a continuous glucose monitor. This was years ago when I was I don't even think I had my health coaching certification yet, let alone went to university for nutrition and exercise. But I can remember I was on vacation with a friend who was type 1 diabetic, and she just had a regular blood glucose monitor. We were sitting there and I was fasted and I was drinking a coconut. I drank a whole coconut, so coconut water, high in sugar, but I mean, love a coconut. I love a coconut when I'm on vacation. And she was like, "Oh, do you want to test your blood sugar?" I can't remember what my reading was, but it was like off the charts high, and I was shocked. Looking back at it now, I drank a lot of coconut water all at once. I drank that fasted, so of course my blood sugar was high. But I can remember seeing that and being like, oh my God, something is wrong with me. And that's where I think that context matters, and where it's not just about isolated blood sugar spikes. But looking back on it now, I know that if I eat something before I drink that coconut, my blood sugar won't spike as high. If I do some exercise before or after that, even just going for a walk, again, my blood sugar spike isn't going to be that high. So that was one that's just really stuck with me. And I actually tested coconut water a couple weeks ago using my CGM. That video should be up on YouTube Shorts maybe in the next few days, maybe in the next couple of weeks. I'll link to the playlist for those if you want to check them out. I'll put that up above. But I tested just drinking 1 cup of coconut water and then 2 cups of coconut water, and the spike actually wasn't that significant. So I think I just drank a lot all at once. And like I said, I was sitting around by the pool, I was fasted. All of these things play a role. It was probably really hot, which can also cause your blood sugar to go up. In hindsight, this isn't surprising, because anything that is high in sugar, natural sugar or not, is going to raise your blood sugar. And the same goes for tropical fruit. So things like pineapple, these can spike your blood sugar a lot. And I've seen this. Another one that shocks a lot of people is dates. Now, I don't know why, but dates are considered to be low GI. Yes, they do have a bit of fiber, but they do also have a lot of sugar. And from my experience, I tested dates a few weeks ago too. I think I ate like 4 or 5 at one time. The blood sugar spike was significant. And I get so much pushback when I talk about this, but I've tested dates multiple times. Yeah, if you only eat one, I think it's something like 9 grams of sugar, maybe even slightly less. That's probably not going to be an issue. But if you're eating more than that, then yeah, it's going to go up. Another thing that shocks a lot of people is the impact that juice has on blood sugar, even if it's freshly squeezed. And this also applies to smoothies because when you're blending the fruit, you're actually breaking down the fiber. And fiber is something that helps to slow down digestion. And because it slows down digestion, blood sugar spikes are going to be lower than if the fiber isn't there. So this is why if you're drinking juice, if you're drinking smoothies, you're going to see more of a blood sugar spike than you are if you're just eating that fruit whole. Also, the fact that you can pack so much fruit into a drink as opposed to just eating it. Now, I'm not anti-fruit by any means, but I do think there's always better and worse options. If you're trying to control your blood sugar, the best fruit you can eat is going to be fruit that is low in sugar. So things like berries, those are a great option. I know you wouldn't really, well, you do classify avocados are fruits, but obviously they are a very low sugar fruit. So they are great as well. Things like coconut meat is high in fat, but low in carbs and sugar. And then on the opposite side of the spectrum, you have your tropical fruits. So things like pineapple, like I said, that's going to spike your blood sugar a lot. Anything that's really sweet. But then you're always going to be better off eating those fruit whole than you are drinking their juice. So eating pineapple is going to be better than pineapple juice. Or eating mango is going to be better than eating dried mango because, again, when the fruit is dried, it just becomes a more condensed form of sugar. Another thing that shocks a lot of people and that I've found personally is that sourdough bread raises blood sugar significantly. Yes, in terms of things like anti-nutrients and just how friendly it is on your gut, sourdough is a better option than white bread. It's a better option than whole grain bread. But in terms of your blood sugar, yes, it's better than white, but only marginally better. Again, there are things you can do to lower the spike from sourdough. Not a lot of people are eating just sourdough on its own. Of course, if you have it with protein and fat, slows down digestion, the spike's going to be lower. But this is where there's so much nuance. Foods need to be put into context. There are foods that are better and there are foods that are worse, but foods aren't necessarily good or bad for the most part. And I'm primarily talking about whole foods here. Yeah, not a fan of processed foods. Not a fan of anything that has vegetable oils or refined grains. I mean, pretty objectively, those are bad foods. But when we're talking whole foods, there's just a lot of nuance because there are situations where spiking your blood sugar can be beneficial, such as when you're exercising, like immediately before. If you're doing a high intensity exercise and you require energy quickly, then eating something like a dried mango beforehand might benefit you. Now, I will say that for most people, they are not exercising intensely enough to require this simple sugar beforehand. But if you are an athlete or training for something intense, then yeah, there are certain situations where these foods can be a good option. But it's something like 88% of Americans are not metabolically healthy and have some level of insulin resistance, then yeah, controlling blood sugar, focusing on minimizing blood sugar spikes, that's going to be what most people should be focusing on. Now, another thing I learned from running a bunch of tests over the last few weeks, over the last few years actually, is that berberine and apple cider vinegar and vinegar in general have a pretty similar blood sugar blunting response. And by that, I mean they both lower blood sugar spikes to about the same degree. Now, obviously, apple cider vinegar is a pretty affordable option, but a lot of people aren't a fan of the taste. Side note, if you are drinking apple cider vinegar, you need to make sure you're diluting it in water. Otherwise, you're going to completely wreck your teeth. So please don't just shoot it. Take 1 to 2 tablespoons, put it in a tall glass of water, and drink that before your meal, and your blood sugar spike will be lower. But the reason that I recommend berberine is because a lot of people say they don't like drinking the vinegar, they don't like the taste. A lot of people still do worry about their teeth, even though if it's diluted, it's not going to be an issue. And for those people, then taking berberine capsules can be another option that is just as effective. And I'll link to the berberine I recommend and also the apple cider vinegar I recommend in the description box down below. Now, another option if someone is sensitive to berberine is Good Idea drinks, which contain a blend of amino acids and also chromium that work in a similar way as well. I've worked with this brand for a few years, sort of on and off, and I think what they're doing is amazing. Their drinks have no sugar, they're lightly carbonated, they have no calories, and again, they work in a similar way to drinking apple cider vinegar, but the benefit is they actually taste good. Those are only available in the US though, but I think they're at Whole Foods and I think Sprouts now. So you can buy them in stores, but I'll also put a link in the description box down below as well. Yeah, what I've learned is that these can be just such a powerful tool. And it's an easy way to not have to change what you're eating in the sense that you don't need to cut anything out, but you can still see improvements by adding something in. And they really are very, very effective. Berberine, apple cider vinegar have been heavily researched. Chromium, which is in Good Idea drinks, not as much, but it does have solid research supporting it, just not as much. Another thing I've noticed is that just the impact that a simple walk can have, because when you're exercising, when you're moving your body, you're able to use the sugar that's in your bloodstream immediately for energy. So this means that your blood sugar spike won't be as high. And this can be just an easy way to have better blood sugar control is to just go for a walk before or after you eat. Obviously, regular movement is good for so many areas of our health. And I think a lot of it stems from helping to control our blood sugar better. Now, I want to touch on a few other things that I have found impact my blood sugar that I have been surprised about. The first one being heat. Basically, anytime I've been wearing a continuous glucose monitor or tracking my blood sugar and it's been a really hot day, my blood sugar will be continuously higher. If I'm in a sauna or I have a really hot shower, again, I'm going to see my blood sugar go up. And this isn't necessarily a bad thing, but it's just something to keep in mind. Sometimes when I'm exercising, I see my blood sugar go up as well, even though I haven't eaten anything that is rich in carbs. And this just means that your body is creating or releasing the glucose that it needs to fuel that workout, that the intensity of that workout is high enough, and that there's not enough glucose available. So that's why you'll see a bump there. And again, not necessarily a bad thing. Your body is just doing what it needs to do to fuel you. And this is another factor that a lot of people overlook, and that is just how impactful sleep is. When you don't sleep well, your blood sugar, it's going to be more variable throughout the day. You're going to see higher spikes, you're going to see lower lows, you're going to see it's just higher at baseline. And this is because when we don't get enough sleep, we become temporarily insulin resistant. So insulin levels are higher the whole following day, and that means blood sugar is going to be higher as well. And this is why it's just really difficult to improve your blood sugar, to reverse prediabetes and insulin resistance and type 2 diabetes if your sleep isn't in check. For people who work night shifts, this is why they're at a much higher risk of chronic disease, including type 2 diabetes. Proper sleep is so important, and I have seen this with myself. Stress is another factor that can cause your blood sugar to go up. And this one is particularly annoying because, you're already stressed out. You don't want to have to stress out more about your blood sugar being high. But again, it's just your body trying to do the best it can. It's sensing a threat and it's trying to provide energy so you can get away. But unfortunately, not a lot of us need that energy. We're not actually running from our problems as much as we would like to sometimes. But anyways, those are just a few lessons I've learned from measuring and tracking my blood sugar over the last few years, from running tests, from also working with clients who wear CGMs and who use blood glucose monitors. You can get a lot of information and really insightful data from using continuous glucose monitors. I do think it's something that everyone should try at least once, But if you become hyperfixated on avoiding spikes and just particular numbers and just a bit obsessive over it, that's where I think it can become problematic. So just be mindful. You don't need to be perfect. Getting results and sustaining them isn't about being perfect. It's about doing the best you can as often as you can and about making changes that you can stick to that are going to be sustainable. It's not about going on a crash diet. It's not about doing a 30-day challenge. It's about making smaller changes that you can stick to. But anyways, guys, I'm going to wrap up this episode here. I hope you enjoyed this. Let me know in the comment section down below if you've worn a continuous glucose monitor before and if there was anything you learned from that experience that surprised you. I love hearing from you guys. So if you're on YouTube, comment. If you're on Spotify, you can also leave a comment as well. And thank you guys for watching or listening. I will see you next time. Bye.